evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Mark Mann. I'm the Director of Programs and Institutes here at the Catholic Information Center, and we're so glad you're joining us for this evening's presentation on breaking the cycle of toxic polarization. Greetings to our friends here at the Information Center, as well as those of you joining us online this evening. Very happy to welcome Kevin McIntosh from the One America Movement, who will be serving as our guest presenter. But before I introduce him, I just want to go over a few housekeeping notes since we have people both online as well as in the room here. And as we continue, let's do so in prayer. Today is the feast of St. Catherine of Siena, who in the early 1300s, Dominican, she was a tertiary Dominican who tirelessly worked for the unity of the church during a time when the church had 2 or 3 popes at a time, as well as the Pope being in exile in Avignon. And she met with popes. She promoted the unity of the church as much as she could. She even offered her death and her illness up for the unity of the church when she died in 1380 on this day. So we call out her intercession for continuing to help us to be the bridge builders that we're called to be. So let us pray. God, we thank you that you are the original bridge builder. We were separated from you because of sin, and by your amazing grace, you sent your Son to bridge the gap between us. Through his death and resurrection, we have been given new life and called to serve you, to love like him, to love you and our neighbor. Help us to love like you, showing love even in the most tough relationships. Open our eyes to the bias we may hold that stops us from building bridges with our neighbors. Help us to have open ears to hear the struggles, needs, and desires of those around us who may have a different worldview. Let your Holy Spirit guide our words and steps when working towards peacemaking in our community. Let your will be done in us and through us. We ask all this through Christ Jesus our Lord. Amen. Mr. Kevin McIntosh is the Faith Over Division Senior Manager for the One America Movement. He earned a BA in Religious Studies and History from Emory University and his Master of Theological Studies from Harvard Divinity School. Prior to joining the One America Movement, Kevin served as a coordinator of Campus Interfaith Resources at Grand Valley State University. In his free time, do you have any more free time, Kevin?
Not as much.
Kevin is a new father as of 6 months ago. So congratulations on that. But when he does have an opportunity to get some free time, he enjoys watching the Tampa Bay Rays, struggling with crossword puzzles. You do the New York or the
New York Times.
Oh, all right. As well as going for runs. Please help me welcome Mr. Kevin McIntosh.
Thank you. It is always a joy to work with Mark and the Paulist Scholars and doing the workshops here. And this is one of my favorite ones, talking about being an in-group moderate. I recognize some people, I think some folks have come to these presentations before, and I feel often I get to be the bearer of bad news. I got to say why we're polarized, maybe offer a couple solutions, but it's mostly the diagnosis of the issue. Today is more about solutions. Today, it's talking about how do we be what we call an in-group moderate. Here in Michigan, we have an open governor's race coming up. We have an open senatorial race coming up. I heard people talking about the Canadian election that just happened. So I just want to calm maybe some fears that being an in-group moderate does not mean being politically wishy-washy. It doesn't mean being political neutral. It doesn't mean you can't hold strong and important political positions. We'll explain what it means in a little bit, but sometimes I just want to get that off because I think it's not the best term. It's not the best term. It's a term that we use. It's a term that we criticize a lot in our work, and because people hear moderate and they often go to this wishy-washy, we can't have our strong opinions and our strong stances. So that's not what it means.
Try again.
But before we start, I'm with an organization called the One America Movement. The One America Movement is a national group of faith leaders who are building a network to lower toxic polarization. I think that toxic polarization is a spiritual crisis. And if it's a spiritual crisis, then faith and our tenets of faith and our stories and our exemplars and our faith leaders can really be this antidote, be a powerful response. It can help us make understanding and call us to love our neighbors as ourselves, to go out there and connect with the people who we may see as the other, or may see as those who we strongly disagree with on numerous things. Our faith already calls us to do that. So the good thing about this work, as one of my good colleagues says often, is it's not rocket science. We're not asking for people to do a brand new thing. We're asking people to live the tenets of our faith traditions and what they call us to be. A little about me. I've been with the One America movement since 2022, so it's been a couple years. I got married about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago now. I was able to walk here today because the weather's great. It's starting to be that spring, so I live up the street, up on Wealthy. As Mark said, in my free time, I enjoy running, crossword puzzles, listening now. I don't get to watch the games as much, but I do listen to them before I go to bed after Hayden goes to sleep. And then this is my newest obsession, is Hayden, my 6-month-old. That's us at the zoo during opening weekend down the street. He's obsessed right now with his mom. He used to laugh at all my jokes, and now I have to like struggle to get a laugh. Whatever Rachel, my wife, does, he just thinks it's the best thing ever. And so not jealous, maybe a little bit, but he's really great right now. It's sort of been my, one of the reasons I like to do this work, because I get to see the future and get to see trying to leave the world better than what we have it now. I've used the term toxic polarization and normal polarization. To understand toxic polarization, I think it's important to say it's okay to disagree. So normal polarization is all about disagreement. It might mean I disagree with you on a singular issue. We might disagree on immigration reform, on gun control, on healthcare, so much more. And that's okay. We strong and diverse views is essential to the democratic process. It's a healthy part of a pluralistic society. I think the world would be very boring if everybody just agreed with me all the time. And I think lots of things just wouldn't get done, especially at our household with chores, if everybody was the same as me. And so having people who disagree and challenge and make you think critically is just really important. It becomes toxic when it's no longer about the idea. It says, I don't like who you are. It becomes a not us versus them even, but an us or them situation. And it gets worse and worse. It starts off with, we disagree on this issue. And so now I can't agree with you on any other issue, or I can't work with you on anything we might agree on. It's saying that it becomes sort of more of a hurricane in some ways, where things get swept up and our identities become bigger and bigger, and we can't find those common connections across the differences. Any questions on normal versus toxic before I get into sort of how in-group moderation helps combat toxic? All right. This is a long quote. I asked Mark and somebody else for some help in the Catholic social teachings, and they gave me one of Pope Francis's encyclopedias about brotherly work. And so I love this whole quote. I'm only going to read part of it. This is a long quote. But today, in many countries, hyperbola, extremism, and polarization have become political tools, employing a strategy of ridiculous suspicion and relentless criticism in a variety of ways. One denies the right of others to exist or have an opinion. Their share of the truth and their values are rejected, and as a result, the life of society is impoverished and subjected to the hubris of the powerful. Political life no longer has to do with healthy debates about long-term plans to improve people's lives to advance the common good, but only with slick marketing techniques primarily aimed at discrediting others. You can go to the next slide. This just fell apart of me a little bit. I'm gonna try to fix it on the go.
Got it.
Yeah. So this is a little bit of a shorter quote. It's one of my favorite political scientists. He's a professor at WashU. But this rhetorical shift from wrong to evil is deeply worrisome, especially in a pluralistic society with deep differences over important matters. Wrong holds out the possibility of persuasion. Evil usually calls for avoidance or annihilation. So again, it's okay to say somebody's wrong. It's okay to say, I think you are wrong on that issue. I disagree with you on that issue. But when it turns from wrong to evil, that's when these negative implications come up and up. In our work, we see toxic polarization sort of as a weed. It's spring out. Some of us might be gardening soon, might be trying to go to the farmer's market or buy our plants for the spring. A couple years ago when I moved into my house, we have a little patch of yard that I was told I could do whatever I wanted with. So I put some mulch down, I weeded it. I was really excited to plant a flower, or plant a couple flowers maybe. And then the next day the weeds were back. And I was like, huh, am I have to pull these weeds every single day to have a garden? And the answer is kind of. Maybe not every day, but you have to pull them often. And you have to tend to a garden. I didn't have a garden. I realized I did not have the patience for that. But for me, toxic polarization is a weed. And the way it grows is from these things around it. So just really quickly, it grows because of misperceptions. We assume the other side's more extreme than they often are. It happens because of meta-perceptions. We assume the other side doesn't like us much more than they actually like us more than we think they do. It happens because of mis and disinformation. When we can't trust what the people on the other side are saying, or when there's a lack of trust, or fear mongers are spreading wrong information purposefully, toxic polarization grows. It comes because of toxic partisanship, which is when we are okay if somebody on our side does something, but we wouldn't be okay if somebody on the other side did the same exact thing. We're willing to give our side a pass. And it comes because of dehumanization of any type of bigotry, racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, etc. These are the soil which allows the weeds of toxic polarization to grow up and up. And as people of faith and as people who want to do this work, we have to be able to see these and name them and know about them to be able to lower toxic polarization. If people can just name or think of a group you are a part of, it can be a church, a book club, anything else. If you want to just yell them out loud, you can unmute yourself. I'm breaking all of Mark's rules right now.
Yeah.
Unmute yourself, just yell them out. A group you are a part of in your community, at home, anything else. What is it? Center in Prayer.
The Institute for Global Education.
The Institute for Global Education.
Book club.
Book club.
Being left-handed.
Being left-handed, left-handers. I have a good friend who's left-handed. She would 100% agree. Anybody on Zoom want to shout out a group they're a part of?
Or you can post it in the
Or
chat.
post in the chat.
Yeah, either unmute yourself or post it in the chat.
I am also left-handed.
Also a left-hander. Mark mentioned I like to run. When I moved here, the way I built community was Grand Rapids has lots of run clubs. And so I would join them and get to know people and make some of my close friends, met my wife through them. Small groups at church, lots of groups that we're all a part of, families, churches, etc. What makes you feel included in that group? What about that group makes you feel like you belong there?
A history.
History?
History of me and my family.
Yeah. So you've been there for a while and you 40 years. Yeah.
And interests.
Common interests. Yeah. You wouldn't join if you didn't like soccer, you probably wouldn't join a soccer fan club. You have an interest in people there.
Being welcome.
Being welcomed. Yeah. People aren't giving you the stink eye when you walk in. You're known. Anybody on Zoom? people online a chance to talk.
Desire to serve others is what Angelo shared.
Perfect. Desire to serve others. That there's a common, again, this common interest that people are all in this together. Yeah. We know we belong. It's kind of a weird question, right? Because sometimes you just know. Like, these are my people. This is my group. I know I belong because I feel welcomed. We have common interests. We have a history. We've been there for a while. I feel safe there. I can be fully myself all the time. I don't need to pretend to be something or have not be as authentic as I could be. Feeling included is really important. Feeling like you belong is really important to human beings and human flourishing. The Surgeon General for Obama, part of Trump won, and then for Biden, talked about the loneliness epidemic, especially during COVID. And he wrote that during his years seeing patients, it wasn't cigarettes or obesity or other things that caused the most issues. It was loneliness. Loneliness and weak social connections were associated with a reduction in lifespan similar to that caused by smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Being lonely, not having a group, is dangerous for us physically. It is also dangerous for us spiritually. The one thing God said was not good during the creation story was that it was not good for man to be alone. It was not good for a person to be by themselves. There's lots of things that God said was good often in the creation story, but the one thing he said was not good was for man to be alone. Spiritually, we need people. Physically, we need people. We need our groups. We need our people. You need to have that person who you have shared interests with, that you feel welcome, that you have history with. You need your people around you. And we form groups so fast, so fast. As I've mentioned, I have a 6-month-old son, and I've been fascinated seeing him play with toys that he gravitates towards the toys with faces more and more. I don't know if this is something I noticed because of this work. It might just be, I was telling my wife this earlier today, it might be a moot point because recently he's really loved a toy strawberry. But he has a Hungry Caterpillar worm. I think is his favorite toy. For a while, it was like a picture of a hedgehog that had a face on it. He has a hedgehog thingamajig that I've called Rosie that he likes much more than any of the things that dangle in front of him. This might be me just like putting my own bias on this, but he recognizes the faces. We determine real quick in our lifetime if somebody's a friend or a foe in a matter of milliseconds. It can be based on what they're wearing. It can be based on if they're right-handed or left-handed. It can be based on when you ask somebody what church, what synagogue you go to, and they tell you, you can decide, oh, you go to that church, which means I put you in a box already, or you go to that place, or you're in that group, or you live in that neighborhood. Really quickly, our brain, for shortcuts, because there's lots of things we're thinking about, determines if you're in our group or not in our group. And what's really important for groups is that our group survival is our survival. Because loneliness is scary. We know our group. So our group survival means our survival. We need our people. And what happens with that is when our group faces threat or perceived threat, when we think it's something's happening to our group, a few things happen. Dislike and dehumanization goes up. There's an increased likelihood of perceiving dislike by a different group. If we think our group's under threat, we dislike the group that we think's threatening our group. A perceived threat affects the saliency of our identities. Some of our other identities that we might have in common, we don't think about as much. Often our political identity, if it's a political threat, goes up. We might ignore our neighborhood associations, or we might ignore the fact that somebody's a common follower of Christ. We might ignore that somebody else is somebody in Grand Rapids, or any of the things we have in common. We ignore those common shared identities, focus on the one. In-group affinity, again, this idea of out-group socialization decreases. We're not going to socialize with the other group. We're going to focus in and stay within our boundaries. We know our people. We need to protect our people. We need to be with our group. And the one that we're going to talk about the most today is a decreased willingness to challenge in-group social norms. When we think our group's under threat, we're not likely to speak up if we disagree with our group, because our group has to survive. This is all from, I can send a report. This is all from a group called Beyond Conflict, who looks at social group theory and how groups across the world connect and have resources with each other. Take some time. I'm not going to ask this one out loud. I'll share a story of one of my groups, though. Think about a time that your group, maybe the group you mentioned earlier, maybe a different group, started to veer, maybe didn't go all the way, but maybe started to veer towards something that might be considered toxic polarization. Maybe they said something, maybe somebody, did something that started going down that path. Just think about a time. A few weeks ago, February, was actually at the Super Bowl. I was at a Super Bowl party with some friends. Somebody said something. It's actually a scenario that's going to be going down later on. Somebody said something about a political figure who many of us probably agreed with. We didn't like that political figure. They said something that really steered toward political violence. They said something that was uncalled for, pretty inappropriate. There was like 10 of us at a friend's house. It was one of my first nights away from Hayden, hanging out with my group of friends. And somebody in that group said something. And fortunately, I work at this place, and I have this new barometer of when I hear people veer towards toxic polarization, my spider up a little bit, and I notice it more and more and more. And so I think I said something quietly. I think I might have said, "Hey, let's not do that. Let's not say that." Right? It was hard to speak up. It's hard to speak up in those situations, even when you know what's wrong. So this is supposed to be a poll. We changed computers last minute for different reasons. So I want you to think, did you speak up in that moment? Were you like me, where you might have whispered something? Like meekly said, "Don't do that. Don't say that." Were you loud about it? Were you quiet about it and say, "I'll talk to them later," and then forgot about it? Just think about that. Did you speak up? If you did speak up, what helped you? And if you didn't speak up, maybe what stopped you? And we all have times, right? You probably think of multiple times, and sometimes you do speak up, sometimes you don't speak up. So this isn't, you can give one of each if you want to. But what helped or stopped people from speaking up?
Group member of. Sorry. I'm a member of a group who we used to work together, and we worked in different countries all over the place, but we got to know each other quite well. And now we're all retired, and we meet a couple of times a month. Sometimes we have stuff to do and sometimes not, but for me, I think that people are used to it, but I was angry at somebody they wanted to say, "Well, we did this and it was actually in Asia, and we had to do this and this." But I said, "That's not a very good thing to do."
Yeah.
And then we went after it, and then everybody got involved in it. But I think overall it turned out really quite well.
Yeah. So part of that sounds like is you've had one thing that helped you maybe, and I might be putting words in your mouth, is that you had a long-term relationship with those people.
Right.
That you've known them for a while.
35 years, 40 years.
30, 40 years. So you've known them for a while. So you felt comfortable if you said something, they weren't going to boot you out of the group, potentially.
Yeah, well, it'd be all right if they did therapy.
Thank you.
Our group in Centering Prayer, we have, I guess you could say, a policy that anybody can speak their mind. You don't have to agree with it, but you have to have respect for them and not take offense because somebody believes different than you. And I call it our safe place because we do have different views and different ideas. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, so going in and having either formal or informal policies that says you're allowed to speak up, and we want you to speak up and disagree if you disagree. Yeah.
I probably don't say something because I'm afraid of backlash.
Yeah.
You know, I don't feel like I would have enough gumption to continue my thought of don't do that or whatever it may be. If somebody came back with something, I think I would freeze at that point and I'd be done. So I don't say anything to begin with and just kind of deal with it on my own.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom. Yeah. So I mean, I feel that way too. Like, you're supposed to say something, but then it's and then what's my comeback? If I say something and they say something back to me, I don't actually know what I say then. And yeah, I feel that also. Thank you. One thing that I know has stopped me, and we see this from the research, is actually ourselves. There's something out there that's called the halo effect. And again, this is when we can excuse someone's more extreme thoughts or actions because they're a member of our group. And that's a us thing that when that happens, just to realize it. Maybe I would have spoken up more if somebody said that about a political leader on my side and I was at the Super Bowl party. Maybe I would have spoken up a little bit louder. But it's really easy, especially when you like people, to give people the pass, to give people they didn't actually mean it that way. They were joking. I know them because of our history. Like, I know they didn't actually mean it that way. So we can give people that pass when they're in our own group. But being an in-group moderate means talking to our own side. And to show, I was thinking about examples in our political world, folks who I might disagree with or I might agree with when they've on the political spectrums, when they've been in-group moderates. I think it's important to just recognize that. And so I just want to give two examples of two people who most people could not say are political moderates. So in 2018, down in Texas, the Republican Party of Texas wanted to kick, in a small city, wanted to kick a leader out of their leadership position because they were Muslim. One of the people that came in and said, hey, Republicans, this is not who we are, is Senator Ted Cruz. He said, this is not what it means to be a Republican in Texas. This is not what we do. We don't kick people out because of their religious beliefs. We might disagree with their religious beliefs. That's okay. But we don't kick them out of our group because of that. The other person on the other political aisle, John Fetterman, in this past election, President Trump won. John Fetterman is a Democrat from PA. Disagrees a lot with President Trump, but he met with a few of his more cabinet members and other folks. He said, this person won. We have to listen to that side. We have to be able to engage in these conversations better. And I'm not going to just ignore, because that's not what Democrats do. We don't say things about election or question the election integrity right now. He won. We got to do the process like we should do it. People on both political sides. Again, political integrity, questions about that. There's lots of questions you can have about why they do that. What's the political motives behind doing those things? I'm not here to talk about that. It's just to say those two folks, most people wouldn't say are moderate. In-group moderate means talking to your own side. It's a scary thing to do, though. Because again, if our group kicks us out, where do we go? We're walking in the wilderness. It's a scary place to be. We're going to skip the video for now. There we go. Theologically, again, we work in a multi-faith place, and so I have verses from 3 world traditions. But we're called to be peacemakers. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Being an in-group moderate means calling our own side to be peacemakers. It means calling our own side in to live out the values that we hold to be true. When they start saying that group's evil, for us to say, they're not evil, they're wrong, 100% wrong. But let's not call them evil. Let's just change our words. We're called to do that throughout time and place. So just in our tables, it says pair and share, but we're going to do quadruple or centuplets, pentagon, whatever it would be for 5s. And then how many people are online? 4. So we're going to another quadruple. So we're going to break into small groups and just talk, why is being an in-group moderate? This idea to talk to your own side. Again, not politically moderate, talking to your own side. Why is that important to you, do you think? Or why should it be important? And then, is there an exemplar from your own tradition, thinking about how our faith has called us to do this throughout time and place? Is there an exemplar from your own tradition or your own background or your own family life who you can say was a really great in-group moderate example? So those are our 2 questions. We'll give you about 5-ish minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody want to share what you talked about in your tables or in your Zoom group?
How about we start with folks on Zoom? Anyone willing to share a couple of headlines? Joe, go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was basically saying that the book in Matthew, Jesus asks us to be peacemakers in the Beatitudes. So that's the that's the example that I follow when it comes to trying to find someone who is in the moderate point of view. It's not about being moderate; it's about bringing peace.
Yeah.
You know, we're looking to bring that peace, but that doesn't mean that we are, wimps and roll over for anything that happens. There has to be a strong moral footing. Right is right and wrong is wrong. That's what I say.
Yeah, Jesus in the Beatitudes is a great example, I think, of somebody who, and Jesus in general, is a great example of an in-group moderate, right? Somebody who had strong as his beliefs and strong in his opinions, and when people on his group, his disciples did stuff that didn't live up to the thing, he would call them out and say stuff to them. Thank you.
Someone at this table?
We were discussing just in our group. We've had progress of trying something that someone wanted to do that took up more time than we had, and we tried it for a while, and then we said, well, those are things that we do on a daily basis at home. We don't have time in our group to do that as well. Not taken away from that subject, but letting that person know that it wasn't going to work in our group because of our time frame. And I believe it worked out very well for everybody. We were all a little nervous at the time because we knew how dedicated this person was to wanting to do what he wanted to do, and we tried it, and then we let him know that we just didn't have time, but it's something that we all do on a daily basis, and that maybe that should be done at home when we're centering on our own. So it was very good for our group to learn and grow through that.
Yeah. One thing I want to highlight what you said, and this will go into the next slide. I think you're reading the mind a little bit. These are personal relationships. It's sometimes a lot easier, I'm not saying it's easy, sometimes it's a lot easier to yell at that person on TV who we disagree with and just be like, if only you would do better, if only. But when it's somebody in our prayer group or somebody in our community, it is so much harder to have that conversation because we care for them. You know, I think about family members who I love, and they say stuff. It's so much harder to have that hard conversation with them than it would be to, go on X or Twitter and type up in 140 characters and get my voice out there in the atmosphere. But when that relationship is there, it becomes a lot harder.
Someone at this table want to share? Thanks.
I was just making the comment that I guess I didn't really know what an in-group moderate was
Yeah.
until you described it. And I guess a group could be a lot of different things like we just talked about, So you might have, in our case, it might be a group of family members. So that, to me, unless you can tell me if this is wrong, but that is a group.
Yeah.
But if there is, disagreement about certain things, beliefs or whatever, an in-group moderate is maybe somebody in that group, it's family, and you have to, try to speak up you're still trying to preserve the family, but say, okay, let's agree to disagree, or,
Yeah.
We have to respect each other's opinions.
Yeah, exactly. It's also, so it's both that. It's both being the person who says, like, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's keep our group together. So it's that, and it's also the person when the extreme voices in the groups get loud, that you can be like, this is not who our family is. This is not who, our parents, our grandparents, whoever raised us to be. We can disagree on the issue, but let's not call that group over there a dehumanizing word or call them evil. We can disagree on that, and that's fine. Or we can agree on the issue. We can actually agree on this more likely, but let's not use polarizing language all the time. And it helps just lower the temperature down. Yeah, I heard you say that when I put this question up. I'm like, that's a good point. We just talked about in-group moderate. Maybe it's not a great question quite yet to have people think about, why is this so great? And you're like, well, I just learned about the term. So that's something for me to think about.
Wait, Elise shared in the chat, I can go ahead and read it, but about creating safety and practicing active listening leads to higher levels of emotional intelligence, empowering us to not walk alone in faith and we can walk with authenticity.
Yeah.
Versus being fake or phony about something.
Yeah, have that active listening and having in that relationship. If you're the one who is known as the active listener, if you're the one who's known to be steady presence, and if you're the one who speaks up, people are going to listen a lot more than if you're always the one yelling or shouting from the loudest. If you're the one that says, hey, I agree with you on, again, 99% of the things you just said. Let's just change that one word. So we are not feeding the flames of polarization that are out there.
There you go.
It's hard, though. It is hard, and it's tiring being an in-group moderate. My colleague, Pastor Tom Bredin, often says when he's talking about being an in-group moderate that in a political coup, when dictators take over, in-group moderates are often the first ones shot. That in-group moderates are often the first ones that are kicked out. It is a dangerous and sometimes scary thing to be. We've talked about some of the reasons, right? We've talked about how we don't always know the next thing to say. We're worried about losing a close friendship. We're worried maybe about our own personal safety. There's lots of reasons why this is hard. I'm sure we can list a bunch of them out. I have four that I want us to think about today. Sometimes the risk is that you think you're gonna be the only voice in the room. If I say something in this group, if I say something in my family, will anybody back me up? Will anybody say, oh yeah, no, you're right, we shouldn't say that? Or you're right. Or am I gonna be the only one shouting on an island by myself? There's a high personal cost. A loss of friendships, loss of group, lots of a church family. Again, lots of this group. We talked a lot today about group dynamics, and loss of a group's really scary. There could be a high professional risk. We work a lot with clergy across the country. And if a clergy says something to their own parishioners, those parishioners could then fire the clergy. And there's a space where if you speak up, you could lose your job for our faith leaders. Or it could be your safety. Your safety could be at risk. You might be thinking about your physical, emotional, mental safety, about the reasons you don't want to speak up. So we're going to go in a breakout room for about 12 minutes this time. What are some things that you could think about in the moment, maybe prior to the moment, right after the moment, that could help not eliminate the risk? There's always risk in this work, but help to mitigate or lower that risk. So there's going to be about 12 minutes. We'll chat about those, and we'll come back. And if you want to try to give 1 or 2 solutions for each of those, that'd be great. So really quickly, I'll give some responses. I'm going to let, if you all had any things you talked about for the
hold on,
only,
wait. Oh, here they come. Here they come.
they're back.
Now we're good. Yep.
If you all had any solutions or ideas for how to mitigate the risk if you're worried of being the only person in the room, start that one. I know you guys talked about a lot of things. I don't know if that.
Other people's opinions.
Yeah.
And not just trying to be open to other people's opinions and not close people off. But that gets very difficult,
Yeah.
especially with family.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was our main discussion.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Yeah. So I think being open, and we know that the more people feel like they belong in a group, the more willing they are to engage across difference. If you know you're secure in your group and you know you're not going to be kicked out because you disagree, you're more likely to engage in other types of differences. So I think making sure as you talk to that person, or if you're afraid you're the only voice in the room, when you speak up, making sure you have those relationships very strong. Some other things to think about, again, this is often we do this for faith leaders, but so we can think about community or group. Often you're not going to be the only voice. If you think something's wrong, there's probably somebody else in that group that also thinks the comment that was said, or it's always the uncle, right? As an uncle, I always don't like that, but it's always the uncle who says something at Thanksgiving dinner. It's always the uncle. It's always the uncle.
Some of the group, I think we should not talk that way.
I agree.
That's-
Yeah, it's always the uncle on like comedy shows or on TV shows. I mean, as an uncle, I don't like that either. But they're not gonna be the only one. You're not gonna be the only voice, the only person thinking that way. So trying to find those like-minded leaders, or find allies in your group. Find allies even if they disagree with you, right? Or they might disagree with whatever your stance is. Find allies who you know will have your back if you speak up. Are some ways to really live into it and help mitigate that one risk. High personal cost. I want to share some things you all talked about.
Kathleen, you want to
It can be broad.
We talked about the high personal cost. And what we talked about was if you're in a group and you're going to disagree with somebody, it's good to start with something positive, like say, I'm really glad you feel safe to talk about this difficult subject here.
Mm-hmm.
And I like something of what you said, but I think we need to change some of the language. It's so polarizing.
Yeah. Do you want to come up here and do the rest of this? That's spot on. Right. Assessing your values. These are like assessing your values and the values you both share is something you said there. Like, this is something we both agree on. Here's something that we can both stand on. Let's just change one word. I'm not asking you to change everything you think. I'm not asking you to change everything you believe. We're just changing it a little bit. And identifying, again, support systems. Support systems will be big in all of these. But who else are your allies in this group? Who else will think in the same way or are also kind of afraid of speaking up? Because again, we see throughout many groups that there is a couple of loud extreme voices, and then a lot of quiet voices underneath that.
I
Oh,
think
sorry.
it's an. No.
The thrust of it was to find common ground.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. So find that common ground. So if it's a high personal cost, remember that you're in that group for a reason, and that you can find a common ground with that person who you love and respect and probably have deep appreciation for. And so you can find that common ground with them before you turn to say whatever you need to say that you disagree with or that you think they're going too extreme. I think that common ground is really important. We talked about the high professional risk.
We did.
We talked about how trying to find, again, allies or find that support system. Mark talked about being confident in the values, again, that you bring. And so if you, we do this a lot, again, with preachers, but I think it's in any group. If you can look back and say, my integrity says this is the right thing to do, maybe it's worth that risk. But having that and knowing yourself more and more. We also talked about giving people a heads up if you're going to say something or think about the results afterwards that might happen. The last one, online, about safety. Oh, there they are.
Elise, thanks.
Go ahead.
Yes, this is just awesome because I was staring at there is a high professional risk, build allies, and on your like-minded network. I really think this is powerful because it triggered me to think about what would I do if no one on my like-minded network could help me? Do I have the social skills to navigate the repercussions? And there's times where I don't have the social skills to navigate the repercussions. And for me, this just highlights the need to do more of the reading. I don't know if there'll be links later after this presentation about what we can do when we need to face those repercussions head on. Because depending on where you live in the country, your social repercussions may not be identical to someone else's in another part of the country. And I'm just talking about on a macro level, not so much like just with coworkers, colleagues, etc. Because what I've noticed, I ran into something really difficult where in a professional environment, my acumen towards the topic was more moderate. But when I wasn't with that body of people, I noticed I was more vulnerable to be more direct and real about where I stood on something. And I just hope that this will encourage all of us, if we're not doing this work already, to can I live with the repercussions, and what would that look like? And that's very important when you're navigating. I guess in my family system, it was more like instead of it being the uncle, it could be the cousin or a dad or an aunt, and it was like, where does my meta stance start and begin when the repercussions come? And I don't know if we do enough of that kind of work as practice Catholics or people in faith. So I was really excited to hear say that they're spending time with people outside of their faith tradition, because that's where I pick up some of my social. So that's corny, but I'm here for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think one thing I heard you say for all of these, right, the idea of this risk reward table or risk response table is to take some time, and we'll send out a handout tomorrow in the next couple of days with these risks. We can actually write stuff down more on your own, but taking some time to think about who in your network would be these like-minded leaders.
Go ahead.
Who in your network, how do you think about your physical, mental health? What do you need to do to protect that? What do you need to do as you assess your values, right? What are the things you need to do, we need to do ourselves if this is a spiritual crisis of toxic polarization? What are the things we have to do internally to think through what is the risk when I speak up, and how do I help mitigate that beforehand? So that probably not if it happens, but when somebody in our group says something that veers towards this toxic polarization, when somebody at a Super Bowl party says something that leans into political violence, you know, and you have your tools in your back pocket. And so you know what the risks are. You can think through, what do I do in this situation? You know who your like-minded people are. Because a lot of times, again, in toxic polarized societies, the loud voices are really loud. And then there's a lot of quiet voices in the middle, but a lot more of those voices. And so trying to be willing to speak up to say, hey, this is not who we are. We're not the boogeyman that the other side sees on TV or the loud voice with the microphone. We disagree with you and we think you're wrong. We're not going to go that far to call political violence or call for dehumanization or anything like that. We're going to do this one pretty quick. It's going to be about 12 minutes. So 3 minutes. We're going to go about 4 minutes. I'm going to give you 1 more minute. So about a minute per person. A little bit less for this table, but I think about a minute per person. You don't have to answer all of them because there's a lot. So if you want to pick one of these questions, what elements of being an in-group moderate seem the most scary to you? What part of this seems the most scary? What are some ways in the next week, month, year, you build up your capacity to be an effective in-group moderate? And then what are some things you can actually do? So what are some ways you can build your capacity? And what are some things you can actually do in the next few weeks to be better at this, being an in-group moderate? You don't have to answer all of them. I'm not giving you nearly enough time to answer all of them. But if you want to pick one of those questions each and just think about it and reflect on that for a second, and then we'll come back to end with some questions. Be mindful of time. It's my last time ending conversations early. Hopefully the conversations you can continue, not those online, unless you trade contact information. You all can continue conversations after. Like a minute. Does anyone want to share any great insights you had from your conversations before we jump to a Q&A or some questions that we have? So you can either do insights from your conversation, or if you have a question, we're going to pair those together. I'll take either one. I'd love either insights or questions.
We want to start with the group online. Anyone online want to share question or insight from your conversation about building our capacity to be in-group moderate? Go ahead, Elise.
I shared with the group that I want to work on listening to news outlets and medium platforms of information that are outside my comfort zone, because I noticed that I tend to gravitate towards things that interest me only versus building the stamina that I know I don't have fully yet. When let's say a colleague is suggesting that we eat at a certain restaurant and the conversation goes to politics, I realize there's a level of dexterity and human respect if I can at least listen by being informed. So for me, I just need to increase my literacy and reading skills in the areas that I know politically are like a hell no for me. And I probably should say 3 Hail Marys for that. So for me, it was just getting honest with what's uncomfortable for me and not cringe if I see a Sean Hannity book on somebody's desk at work or at the library or a colleague or wherever I'm going. Like, where can I be more mature? And I think that's what's missing at this sector of my development. Like, there's a lot that I want to redefine. We all need safe spaces to have those kind of conversations.
Thank you. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
One thing I think that you said I think is just really important. I'm going to move this back.
Yeah, sure.
I was listening. Is one, by being willing to engage with people in your group. It also means not every comment, right? If you're willing to engage, you're willing to have those conversations, then when you do speak up, your voice gets even louder, right? Because you're not jumping at every disagreement. You're not jumping at everything you disagree on. You're willing to have respectful engagements of difference. But once they say something, again, within your group, or if they disagree with something else that leads towards that political violence or leads towards misperceptions, dehumanization, etc., And then you say something and your voice gets louder because you don't do it every time, right? And there's something, I think what you're saying, at least it sounds like, is being willing to engage and work on engaging in those differences and having those hard conversations and practicing those muscles. And so when then you do become that in-group moderate, it's not somebody saying, they're always doing this. Whenever they disagree with me, it's your voice carries more weight because you're willing to engage in that difference.
Yeah, great. Angelo had his hand up, I
Yeah.
believe, and briefly.
No, well, I just wanted to share a scripture verse that I think helps with one's attitude. It's one that I adopted later in my work career that would really helped, and it's almost along those lines of being in incessant prayer, that you're able to kind of center yourself. And it's from James, and it's be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. And I think if one, you're in that situation, there's a lot of turbulence, and you're just able to kind of focus on that and just repeat that to yourself. It really helps, because so many of us are quick to speak and share our point of view. So, but that's a way to kind of combine a little bit of a prayerful attitude with the way that you're looking to be as an in-group moderator as well.
Thank you for that. Yeah. I think that's really great.
Folks here in the room, insight or question?
We were having a brief conversation at this table about family and how, I'll just say, we don't talk about this often, but we talk about all the different groups we're part of, and I said I would talk about this briefly. We're in lots of groups. In some groups, it's easier to do this, right? It's much easier to do this if we don't have that long history. If it's a work group or a work colleague or somebody who I'm not that good of friends with in a running club, and if I say something, it's like, if I lose that friendship, not that big of a deal. Like, we're not that close anyways. Versus somebody you're really close to, versus a brother or a sister or a cousin or an uncle or an aunt or a mom or a dad, when it's much harder to do that. And so I do want to just name, well, it's always hard, right, to be that in-group moderate. There are definitely some times where it might be easier, dependent on the group, and that changes group to group. And I think it is often, again, I run, you can't do a half marathon or a 5K before you do that mile. So how do you practice these skills? How do you practice doing this work, being in prayer, knowing your values, knowing the things you hold that are integral to your own self? And when you go to that conversation, having that mutual respect and having those, but being true to yourself and truly naming what you care about.
I think our group, we talked about a lot of things, but family, we had a couple of different things about family. And one of them was what churches you went to. And that can be a real fiery thing, like, oh, I believe in this and I believe in that. But what I was thinking when I look up there, what seems to be scary is, well, if you start really fighting over what kind of churches you go to. But when you look at it, both churches, even though one's Protestant, one's Catholic, believe in the same Jesus. And so there's a whole lot there that we could pull together too.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking of that kind of answers that whole first question, what we were doing.
Yeah. So I think, again, naming those things you have in common. And so we're not doing this work, being an in-group moderate isn't to a random stranger down on Division Street right below us. It is with people that we share a church with or a religion with, or people we know and have, that we can also go back to say, we're both members of the Christian family. Yeah. Like, we might disagree on how we worship or many things, but we can both say we're parts of this Christian family.
I think we need more to, I think we need more to look to all the common ground that we have instead of the uncommon ground.
Yeah.
And I think if we did that more, just basically in our life, maybe things would be, a little easier. I did notice that the answers to your questions that you split up in groups, every single one of them, the responses, all went to allies. It's important for you to find your allies
Yeah.
in whatever group or whatever you're doing, to be comfortable and not be afraid to speak up and give your point of view. And I think if you know who your allies are, it makes it a lot easier to live that way.
Yeah. The common ground is really important because often with lower and toxic polarization, the messenger matters. If I went to a group that I had nothing in common with and just showed up and was like, don't say those things, people are gonna be like, who are you? What are you doing here? Why are you at our Thanksgiving dinner table? Like, why are you just showing up uninvited? But when it's your people and you say something, that voice becomes louder than just a random stranger coming in. And so finding that common ground and emphasizing that common ground, like, I agree with you on 99% of what you just said. That's just, again, change from that group's evil to that group's wrong. And we're 100% agreement. And it's okay to disagree, but trying to lower those, when people go into that toxic, emphasizing that common ground is really important. I'll hang around. I know it's 8:30, so we're at the time. I just want to thank you. There's lots of things that people can be doing on a Tuesday night. And so I just thank you for coming out here. Thank you for being part of this, for engaging in these conversations, for being willing to speak up and really be part of this network of faith leaders and people of faith, helping to lower toxic polarization across the country. I'll hang around for a little bit. People have more questions, but thank you for being here.
Kevin, thank you.